everyone, and welcome back to the Real Science of Sport Spotlight. This is a show where we take what you are discussing over on Discourse, what the world is discussing in various media outlets, and what's happening in the news, and then we put the sports science spotlight on it. Gareth, I don't know about you, but I'm having some serious withdrawal. There's no men's tour, there's no women's tour, there's no Wimbledon, there's no football, men's or women's, there's no, what else has been on? There's not even any cricket, there's not even tennis. I don't know what to do with myself.
I know, the Lions tour is finished.
That's
and this
gone.
time last year, we were wallowing in the Olympics, and we haven't even got that this year. We've got the World Championships to look forward to. So.
Yeah, at least there's something. And the Vuelta, which I think is actually shaping up to be a very good race. I keep getting these notifications on social media. 1 year ago today, Hodgkinson or Pauline Ferrand-Prévot or Remco winning cycling events in Paris, and I get a massive sense of nostalgia as well. So it's all rather depressing.
It's like training. You've got to train, and then you've got to allow recovery in between. So enjoy the peace while it lasts, for God's sake.
Yeah, I've got to plan holidays around these lulls in the sporting. Although I say there are lulls, there's actually so much interesting stuff. And actually, today's spotlight is very, very, well, when I say very, I mean almost exclusively news-focused. We normally do a bunch of segments in this show. This week is pretty much a focus on the Discourse Digest because there's actually quite a lot being discussed in the world of sport in the aftermath of those sports events. And so that's the focus today. We'll try and make it punchy as we can and whip around the world of sports news and offer those sports science insights. And then if you are at a loss when there's nothing to watch, you can always go over on Discourse, which is our VIP community, and you can read what fellow listeners are saying about this and other podcasts and sports news like the ones that we're going to discuss today. So that community is buzzing and humming. And if you want to be part of it, you know what to do. It's a monthly pledge, even if it's just in support of what we're doing on the pod. That would be much appreciated. And you can throw your weight into some of those conversations. Where shall we begin on Discourse Digest this week, Gareth?
Yeah, we're going to go back to France for the final time this summer, I promise, as the Tour de France Femmes brought the curtain down on the big tours with not on the biggest tours, with a bang, as their home favourite Pauline Ferrand-Prévot. She actually brought victory to France in its own tour for the first time since 1985. And it's no wonder then that the quality of race was excellent, and the eventual French winner meant that the viewing figures in France went through the roof. There was an average of 2.7 million viewers per stage, which rose to a peak of 7.7 million viewers as she won the title on Sunday. That's a 41.2% audience share in France, which is massive. And women's cycling certainly looks like it's up with all the media hype surrounding it at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, it's not just the tour. Obviously the tour has become, within 3 years, because this was the fourth, right? I always lose track. It's the third or fourth. It's crazy how quickly the tour became the centerpiece. It's because the Giro and the Vuelta Femenina, they've been around for quite a long time, and then you suddenly add the tour to the mix, and then everything else looks more positive and on the up as well. So I think it's great. And then even the one-day races, like, I mean, Roubaix, Flanders, and so on. So I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, we've now got identifiable riders, if you know what I mean. Because it's been a few years, you can follow their careers. So I think that's what really adds to it. But this is cycling, and so you can never rely really on a happy ending. Despite her winning, Ferrand-Prévot's remarkable climb up the Col de Madeleine on Saturday, which effectively sealed the victory. I mean, it was, of course, immediately scrutinised because it was just so outstanding. And one of the key points we took from it was that she had lost weight in order to target this stage in particular. In fact, she said this herself to the magazine. And I'll read her quote. "For this race, I knew I had to climb for 1.5 hours over the Col de la Madeleine, and I tried to make the most of it. You need to adapt to the terrain you have. I also know that the shape I have now will not keep forever. It is just the Tour de France. It's also my job to be the best as possible. We know this is an endurance sport, and to climb you need to have a high watts per kilogram. I made the choice. I worked hard for it." By that choice, she means to actually lose weight. And then she goes on to say, "I don't want to stay like this. I know it's not 100% healthy, but we also had a good plan with the team's nutritionist and everything is in control. I didn't do anything extreme and I still had power left after 9 days of racing. It's a tricky subject because you have to find the limit, but I also know I can't stay like this forever. It's the choice I made." Which is really interesting that she's obviously chosen to lose weight, to do the climbing up on this one climb that they'd identified she could win the Tour on. But she's really open about that. And she's also saying she knows it's not healthy. So is it setting perhaps a dangerous precedent and then negating that precedent by being so open about it?
Yeah. Because like in the background to every Tour de France victory, men or women, is a question about optimal weight. It comes up often. Even on
Key
the
to everything.
Yeah, even on the men's side, like people would say, less for Pogacar, but when Vingegaard won his tours, everyone was like, the guy's a skeleton, he's looking skeletal, how is this healthy, etc., etc. If you go back a generation, the same conversations were had. Less so actually in the 1990s, which was interesting. And I think there's an avenue of the weight loss conversation that's quite interesting, because aside from what we'll get onto, I think, in more detail in a moment, the weight issue in cycling evolved because in the 1990s, where doping was more about how do I just add to the top of the equation, watts per kilogram, so it's power divided by mass. I think the prevalence of blood doping and EPO particularly, was just making people so powerful that weight was not unimportant, but thought about less, if that makes sense. Because if you look at guys like Bjorn Ries and Ulrich and even Armstrong, if you look at photographs of Armstrong compared to the current generation, he looks like an American football player. He looks like you'd need a tank to stop him. And I think they didn't need to worry as much because you could get to 500 watts at 70-something kilos. And then I think there was definitely a shift when biological passports and EPO tests, not in that order, the other order, the opposite order, came in. I think the athletes realized that they could get to the same outcome and ultimately climbing performance by taking away from the denominator, the kilograms. And that's why, for instance, that one group wanted to ban cortisone, because there was almost like a Truth and Reconciliation Committee in cycling. Do you remember that? It was called the CIRC or something. I don't remember exactly. But they basically heard testimony from cyclists about how they'd go away, use cortisone on training camps, cut mass significantly and quickly, and then come and race at optimal weight. Well, optimal performance weight, suboptimal health weight. Do you remember that generation?
Yeah, wasn't it Chris Froome?
Well, he was in
2010s.
He was in that
skeletal
window. Yeah, exactly. And it was in that window. And so there was a lot of talk about cortisone. Even as far back as that, there was talk about anti-obesity drugs that were being used by cyclists to try and lose the weight. And it was all micromanaged. That was the period in which... look, it's not... Michael Rasmussen, the Danish cyclist who got kicked off the Tour in 2000, I want to say 7... He was particularly concerned about weight. I remember saying that he would weigh everything that he ate. He didn't want to paint the bike to keep it lighter and so on. So it's not like this only emerged recently. But it's just an interesting subcontext to this whole discussion about weight. Before you even get onto the health implications was that losing weight doping was losing weight and vice versa at one point.
So, I mean, you've got to look at it in the context of the example it sets, but also the health of the athletes who are actually doing it, because we've talked before about RED-S, is it relative energy deficiency syndrome, and the effects it can have on the body, especially the female body, because you have problems with menstruation, issues like that. It's do you think it sets a bad precedent, it's a bad look, or do you think this honesty is makes it okay?
I don't know if it makes it okay, but it's better than doing it, which would happen anyway, and then not talking about it. Mm-hmm. And I think the way it's been covered is better. It looks more positive to me than it has in the past, because every time it's written about, people are very quick to remind readers/listeners that she's got the support team around her, that they're obviously managing it very closely. And most important of all is that she herself has said that I will not be staying this way. Like, I've gone there for a period in order to optimize performance, and then I will return back to where I was. Because just incidentally, like, she didn't race since mid-May. So she came into the Tour de France having not really been seen on the racing circuit. Completely different approach to Vollering, Marlon Reusser, Nuviodoma, and I think those names, they may have suffered from over racing, but that's another conversation. But Ferrand-Prévot, hadn't been seen, shows up on stage 1, which I still think might have been the best stage of the race, drops everyone in the lead out of her teammates on that finishing climb. She looked amazing, but she did look incredibly skinny. And I remember we even said she looks like she's here to look, it's a different cyclist to what we're accustomed to seeing. So, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but the point I wanted to make is that you can go away and you can do this, and there are even papers on this, and I was sharing one of them over on Discourse, and I thought it worth mentioning. It was published by Trent Stellingworth, who is a name you may remember. He's been on this podcast 3 times, I think, as a guest, once with his wife, and she is the subject of this article. It's called Case Study, Body Composition Periodization in an Olympic-level female middle-distance runner over a 9-year career. And the key is body composition periodization. Now, in training talk, we understand that periodization means that you're not at your best for 12 months of the year. You peak at the Olympic Games and for a couple of weeks either side, or you peak at World Champs in Tokyo and a couple of weeks either side. So for a few months a year, you're at your best, and those targets dictate the training you do. So you build your training around your desired peak. And what he's done in this paper is he's described the same concept for body composition. And so they present to you her weights and body fat percentages, or skin folds rather, is the method they use, over a period of these 9 years. And they show you where she competes in 2011, in 2012, 13, 15, and how the skin folds. And if you look at this graph, and I'm going to put this in the show notes, you'll see in profile it looks like the worst Tour de France stage ever designed. It's just one peak and then a valley, then a peak, then a valley, then a peak, then a valley. And the point they make is that over the course of these 9 years, you can achieve significant changes, loss of body fat, reduction in weight, and even muscle mass changes as a result of training and diet, with the specific objective of trying to optimize performance. But you don't stay in the valley. You allow yourself to have the peaks. And so she competes at one point in 2013 with a sum of skin folds under 50, and the following year she's at 85. So that's a 70% change in the sum of skin folds. He talks about body mass changing by 2 to 4% within each of those years, because that's what happens as a consequence of this periodization. But I think the most important thing, and he mentions this in the discussion, is that you don't, and I've said this already, you don't aim to just stay in that peak performance body fat, because you understand that you're going somewhere that's not going to be sustainable and healthy. And we know that, right? No. And so when you are an elite athlete, and when you have a team around you, and when you are sensible and deliberate about this, then you recognize that body composition changes are going to happen and are part of performance optimization.
Yeah, that's the key point is because they've got a team of experts around them and nutritionists, as has Ferrand-Prévot, and they understand that you can't remain there. But for the amateur athlete who perhaps copies, or just that they get the perception that they can stay at that weight forever and keep performing, because no matter what you say, there is a pressure to maintain a body image, and then putting on any weight at all is seen as totally negative to performance.
Or a performance, and that's exactly. So they put it's a self-inflicted body image in order to achieve a performance, which might also be self-inflicted. And I can imagine, and that's where this does become risky. Like, you're on thin ice, as it were, talking and discussing this. And so, for example, for listeners who are parents or coaches, if you're working with a teenager, this is like, do not try this body periodization, this body composition periodization, probably not something you try and do with a young athlete.
It's to achieve optimal performance right at the top end, surely.
Yeah, and that's how I would rather people thought about it, exactly that. Now, what's interesting about it is Pauline Ferrand-Prévot is now the Tour de France champion. From the sponsor perspective, there will be pressure on her to perform more regularly, I think, than just in the Tour. Or maybe not. Maybe she's going to be lucky in a sense that they say to her, all we really want from you is the classic season and a Tour de France, like in 2025. Then she can run the same pattern. But if she comes under some pressure to perform in the other tours and to sustain it for a little bit longer, then is there temptation there to say, Okay, let's try it for 2 months next year instead of the 1 month that we had to do it in. That's where it starts to get interesting. And also, do her rivals imitate this?
Well, no, 'cause that's what's interesting, because if you look at Demi Vollering, she took an opposite line, and I'll quote her. She says, "I mean, for me, it's not so difficult because I don't have problems, and in my eyes, health is always the most important. I'm proud of my weight and want to set a good example. I hope that in the future I can win again with my weight and show girls you don't have to be super, super skinny, and you can just believe that if you have the power and you train hard, that you can make it. I could lose weight too, but I don't want to be extremely thin," Vollering said. "We did talk about losing some weight, but when I got sick in the Tour de Suisse, the most important thing was to get healthy again." So Vollering is taking her attitude, and I don't think she's having a pop in any way at Ferrot. And she's just saying that you can just keep your weight, and that's the weight that suits you. So it's two different approaches, but only one of them won the Tour de France.
And that's why, if she, so this is hypothetical now, but if she hadn't gotten sick in the Tour de Suisse, then would she have come to the Tour de France 2 kilograms lighter? An interesting one to wonder about. And will she come to the Tour de France a little bit lighter? Because in her own words, they looked at it. And so they've recognized that there's potentially a performance benefit there, but they, for perhaps other reasons, bumped up against the downside of it. And that's an important point, right? So like even in Trent's paper, they talk about and they cite other papers where it's pretty obvious. Like if you have if you have low energy availability, which is part of how body composition is changed, is you've got to change the nutritional side of the equation, then your injury risk and your illness risk go up. And so,
how do you maintain the power when you're losing weight like this?
Well, that's the biggest challenge, and I think that there are probably some people who can do it more successfully and better than others. But to allude back to our earlier conversation, the question in the 2000s and 2010s was always like that the doping was enabling them to lose the weight and not lose the power, because it's a really delicate trade-off, that. And I think athletes like Ulrich used to suffer because they used to have to try and lose too much weight too quickly during the period in which you were trying to also optimize the training and the recovery, which was maybe more important. And so he, I think, probably suffered on the other side of this from trying to lose too much too fast. I'm sure there are many other cyclists. The ex-guy, Abrahamson, has spoken often about being 20 kilograms lighter when he was younger. And he's only unlocked performance from getting heavier, which I think is the counterpoint to the must be skinny in order to perform argument. So it's very clear that it is highly individualized. I think Ferrand-Prévot is probably one of those people who can achieve the 2 to 4% or even more maybe weight changes without compromising power for short periods, whereas maybe Vollering can't. Maybe Evenepoel can't. A couple of years ago he spoke about losing weight after the Dauphiné and compromising performance, possibly.
Hold that thought there, because my last question then is, because we spoke about this, and you said that you thought perhaps this was only possible in the women's tour because it runs 8-9 days, and it might not be sustainable over a 3-week tour, this sort of approach. So do you think that's potentially why it worked, and had this been a 3-week tour for the women, that Ferrand-Prévot would have then suffered for it later on?
Yes, maybe. Because
I thought it might be maybe.
Because the problem is you don't snap to your weight. Like, so let's say it's 52 and I'm going to race at 47, 48. I mean, that's a lot, right? But you don't suddenly wake up at that weight. You've got to work your way towards it. So she managed to ride for 9 days without a drop in power, but she's been at a low weight for weeks before that also. And when you then have to extend the period at the low weight to 3 weeks, the window now has expanded potentially to 6 weeks that you've actually got to be at this low body weight with this potential risk, all these risk factors for injury and illness and overtraining and underperformance. So I do wonder whether it would be possible to stay there, because it's kind of like you're in a, not to be overly dramatic, but like when you climb Everest, there's a point at which you go so high that you just are in and out. That's kind of how I think about this. You don't stay in this Everest death zone. You're not adapting.
See,
you just got to
what's
go and then come down.
Me. Mind-boggling to me that they can do these performances in these like multi-stage races when they're not really at their peak because of the calorie deficits.
Yeah, but I think you'll find
It makes no sense.
I mean, the nutritional, because remember Graham Close, fuel for the work required. So she's doing 25 to 30 hours a week during this training block between May and now, and she has to fuel it. She's not going out and riding on water. She's definitely fueling it, but you just change. So it's and look, I'm not a nutritionist at this level, any level, to be clear, let alone this one. But the macronutrient composition of the diet has to be so carefully controlled, I think, and balanced against the training demands. Because if you don't fuel the training, you don't get the adaptation. So then you can get as light as you want, but you won't have the top half of the equation, the watts. So it has to be really well managed, and I think it also has to be well managed. And as I say, I think you need to be working with mature, well-supported athletes. I want to go back to Trent's paper. He describes how this athlete had a low-risk assessment for Red S and the female athlete triad. So there are tools that you can use to assess risk. He talks about how even during the competition phases, the Red S tool produced a low to moderate risk assessment score. So you have to be mindful of these things and make sure that you're not, in the name of performance, nudging the athlete towards these high-risk outcomes. And that's the key message, is like rather focus on, with any athlete you're working on, rather focus on just their performance and let the weight be a consequence of it. But there's no doubt that at this level, when you're trying to win this kind of race, like if you're not paying attention to the watts per kilogram and both sides of that equation, then you might be leaving something behind. But it's no easy game.
Remember climbing brought in rules?
Yeah, and ski jumping.
Oh, I didn't realize ski jumping had. I wonder if cycling will go the same way one day.
If this gets out of hand, then for sure. And that's why it'll be interesting. Does Ferrand-Prévot's performance and the process, and this is where being open about it becomes maybe harmful. Now all of a sudden, hundreds of people say, "I got to imitate."
If it becomes mandatory,
then it's
mandatory to win.
Clearly a problem. But I think Ferrand-Prévot's done her bit to try and prevent that. Can't ask for more, I don't think. Vollering's done her bit. I still think Vollering will. Everyone who wants to match what Ferrand-Prévot did this year, performance-wise, has to, I think about this part of the equation next year. But I hope that it doesn't become
a race to the bottom.
Well, that's the risk, right? That is the risk. And the other risk is, and I've even brought this up on the podcast with Ashley Millman, is in cycling, where it's now becoming more and more competitive, and you're identifying athletes younger and younger, because you're scouting into junior teams now and under 23 teams, and sometimes even under 18 and under 20. The temptation for young women to be spotted as a result of performance is getting bigger, and that may drive the same behavior. And not just women. We're talking now specifically about the Tour de France Femmes, but the same thing is true for men. Is the younger you're trying to scout these athletes, the more you create this pressure among them and their coaches, and that is a risk that they'll have to keep an eye on.
Yep. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on it. So let's switch to athletics, where we perhaps witnessed a new rising star at the US trials in Cooper Littlenhouse. Littlenhouse was a rank outsider for the 800 metres and was more than happy just to have qualified for the final. And for most of that final, things were running true to form, with him off the pace in 7th place, right up to the final bend. And that's when he put in the most astonishing kick to finish second and qualify for the World Championships with a stunning 1:42.27. And this also gives him the world youth record for the 800 metres by over a full second. And that's because he's only 16 years old. And it was an absolutely bewildering performance, which I know caught the eye of a few on Discourse too. Did you see it?
I saw it the next morning because the social media feed was full of it. It was crazy because I turned it on. I'd read about him making the final because he almost fell in the semi-final and sort of recovered, having lost a bit of ground, and still made it. So he was clearly pretty good, and obviously people got excited about him. He was the world under 16 record holder before the weekend with 1:45.45, I think was the time. Mm-hmm. So he runs 3 seconds faster in one weekend than his previous best coming in. Now, if that happens somewhere else, let's be clear. The same people that are praising him would not be praising it. They'd be questioning it. So I'm not doing that. I just want to be clear that not to be hypocritical. This has got faint whiffs of they do it, but we're okay about it, right?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
It's like USADA and Travis Tygart saying, "Oh yeah, we all our athletes, they're just so innocent and guilty of these contamination cases, but the Chinese and Russians, that's so bad. What's going on there?" So like it feels to me like the Bob Beamon equivalent of a like just outrageous performance that you just go, "Whoa, hang on a moment." Now he didn't win. And in fact, 3 blokes ran under 143 in one race, right? Or was it 4?
I think it was 4.
I mean, so the USA has got, like, this is an aside, got mad depth at 800. It's quite astonishing, actually. 800 is going to be a crazy event at World Champs because when Yoni and Arup and even Peter Boll and, it's mad. But back to Littenhouse. We've spoken about a lot of young athletes in the last while. You know, we had Gareth last year and this year there's that Japanese guy. This is by far the best of them, performance-wise.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I think it was the method of it as well. The way he came through on the back straight was just insane.
Yeah, and it's positive for like his development because the race was run like a Diamond League race. Josh Hoey went through 449 something, I think, which is pretty much exactly what's going to happen if he gets a Diamond League race. Now the question is, what does he do now? It's really interesting. Literally 1 week ago on the Spotlight, we spoke about these young athletes, and okay, swimming is different. But Yishi Wen at 16 won an Olympic title, 2 of them in London, and never went faster. So it does sometimes happen that you peak at a very young age, and everyone expects that even with the tiniest of progressions, this guy's breaking the world record. But it may not happen, and so that's what's so interesting about it.
Well, this seems to be so many young kids, I'll call them, coming through in so many different sports. We've had Gout, obviously. We had the Japanese 100-meter runner that we mentioned last week, whose name I don't remember.
Shimizu,
the 12-year-old. That's it. The 12-year-old Chinese swimmer. She won. Actually, she got a medal in the World Championships in the relay because she took part in the heat.
I saw that.
So
Yeah.
She had a medal there. We've had other 1,500-meter runners. It's just, is there something going on with the youth getting faster, or are we just more aware of it now as the media? I don't know.
I think we're just aware of it as in you and I. But like that's not
well,
the only ones. Like I mean,
no.
America's had a handful of teenagers break 10 seconds in the 100 in the last year or two. There was a guy came into the US Champs. I don't know how he ended up doing, but he was a 9.95 guy or something, a high schooler. So anyway, but the point is, I agree with you, and I don't know. I don't know whether there's something to this. It's interesting that like 9 out of 10 of these teens are boys. Although you found a 12-year-old surfer, right? Article in The Guardian about that as well. And I genuinely don't know whether there's something to it. Part of it is I wonder whether the availability of information has made it easier for young athletes to be seen, noticed, and perform faster. I don't know.
As you said, perhaps it's just at the moment American track and field has got it's just a mad depth of talent there. It seems to be, because I would imagine that most of the people who failed like to qualify in 4th place or whatever for these would have gone on to be in at least the finals of the World Championships. Like you mentioned, Josh Hoey, he ran a 1:43.06 to finish 4th, not qualify in the 800. It's such a vast depth, and I think that goes down then through the NCAA. Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know whether it would be such an interesting thing to try and look at and analyze whether the performances of teenagers is better, or whether more teenagers are making the top, 200 in the world adults every year, whether we're just seeing an aberration or whether it's just an availability bias because we're so much more aware of it. I don't know. But it's definitely a topic I'd like to pick up on and look at and try and explore, because I think it feeds into the whole talent ID model. I think cycling is the same. There are so many young guys like you, even Del Toro and Ayuso was picked up young. Pogacar was a teenager when he was signed. There are lots of them like that. So I think there's something to it. I just don't know what it is yet.
The problem is that it's difficult to follow their career arcs, the trajectories, because we're not going to know the answers for another perhaps 4 or 5 years minimum to know where they actually ended up, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, and as you've said before, we only ever hear about the ones that make it. So all these names, and that's why I'm keeping a list of all these names who are touted as stars now, and then to see if they actually disappear or not. But obviously that's a long-term project.
Well, I mean, look, the other one we spoke about last week, she was in fact the catalyst for last week's conversation, was Phoebe Gill. And she was 17 in Paris, ran 157 something. So it'd be interesting to look. I think this Cooper Lückenhaus is slightly closer to the men's world record than she would have been to the women's world record, although that may not be the best comparison given who set that women's world record. But then she didn't run at all this year because she was injured. And so that was just one cautionary tale. It'll be so fascinating to see how this guy, who's got 2 years of high school left before he even thinks about a college career or going professional, like what does he do with his career now? Does he stay with the same coach? There'll be pressure on him to sign contracts, go pro as soon as possible. I mentioned racing diamond leagues. Is he going to go, or is he going to stay in the US and develop there? By 2027 world champs and leading into the Olympics, has he gone faster than 142.27? I think was the time, right? Like, it's going to be so interesting to see his story. I worry for these kids about the pressure that they find themselves under, because this guy, even people who are reserved and cautious normally, like Magnus, are saying it's the most astonishing thing they've ever seen, and this guy's Jim Ryan. So
let's go through the list of that I've got so far. I was just looking at it because I started off when it came up with Gout. Obviously, he was 16 at the time. He's now, I think, 17. So we all know about him. Then there's Divine Nahim, who's a sprinter at 16, dubbed the new Noah Lyles. Landon DuPont, who's a 16-year-old ice hockey player who's meant to be Rookie of the Year already. Rocky Flintoff, you might remember his dad, the cricketer. Yeah, he's been touted as already at 16. Benjamin Noval, a 16-year-old cyclist signed with Ineos Grenadiers, meant to be the future. A 15-year-old sumo wrestler, Nicholas Tarasenko. I mean, I don't even know, at 15, should you be taking up sumo wrestling? That's not really good for your health, surely, to God.
How do you possibly I mean, is there a photograph of him?
I can send you one. Yeah, I can send you the link.
Goodness.
He's from Britain. Yeah. Annabella Fasuba, 13-year-old athletics. Tyler Shannon Gray, gymnast, age 10. Camden Schaefer, footballer, signed for Chelsea. Remember that one? Age 13.
The £700,000.
Yeah, and his younger brother's already with Man City. There was a 16-year-old for Liverpool this week being touted as the next big thing. Two girls, Ava and Amber Snell, 14, archery, dream of being in the Olympics. And then I had T. Ziddy, the 12-year-old swimmer. I've got this massive list, and it's just, when you start thinking of them in like that, all in order, you think, there's a lot of dreams going on there. And how many of these are going to make it?
And those are only the ones we know. Look, I suppose the question is whether if we could you have made that same list in 2012? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, probably, but I think the media pick up on it now. You see, I just pick up on the media stories and add them to the list.
I mean, it's not the first time, but it would be so interesting to see a reverse trajectory plot of the current best 1,000 athletes. I mean, okay, how do you even identify? But like, let's say all the Olympic champions and reverse trajectory their careers to see where they were 10 years before they won an Olympic medal. Because in theory, this Lückenhaus guy's peak is going to be in 2036. Like, that's wild. Like, that's 11 years. He's 27 then.
They've got to be in a system somewhere.
Yeah,
they don't just appear at 18. So they've got to be in a system somewhere.
You just got to mine it right, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
I mean, and then there's remember, there's the Kenyan guy, Koech, who ran 3:27 at 18, allegedly. He's one of those that everyone go, hang on a moment, we can't trust that. But like, no, Lückenhaus is fine.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Did you see that article, by the way, in the New York Times about the doping?
Yeah, about Kenya's doping problems. Yeah, very sad. But like, something we've spoken about is if you were Kenyan if I were Kenyan, I'd dope.
Yeah, I think that article, if anyone gets a chance to read it, it basically sort of explains that the poverty that these runners are growing up in and trying to escape from sort of drives the doping. And it doesn't sort of make it right, you can sort of understand it. But I think when I was reading it, I was thinking everything you were saying about it being a non-organized system, an unsophisticated one-off dopers. You can see that, can't you?
Yeah, and I think it highlights that the solution is not to ban Kenya, it's to try and cut the supply off. Because the problem is they're so available, the drugs. The opportunity to dope is there, and the incentive to dope is enormous, and the disincentive to dope isn't working. And I'm not criticizing the Athlete Integrity Unit, they're doing a really good job, but it's too big a problem to solve. And that's why we get hundreds of these cases, is because they are anyway, you get the idea.
Yeah.
So you got to cut the supply off, not punish the user.
Mm-hmm. Look, we'll go back to the American trials, because one star was rising, two older stars were squabbling, because over in the men's 200 meters, Noah Lyles went head to head with Kenny Bednarek, and in what's rapidly turned into a grudge match, he beat his rival after coming from behind in the last 50 meters. As they neared the line, Lyles looked over to stare directly at Bednarek in what I would call a confrontational manner.
Yep.
And this resulted in Bednarek swapping lanes after the finish to run behind Lyles and shove him in the back. So it's all a bit of posturing and no harm done to my mind in the end. And everybody loves a bit of drama. So what did you make of it?
Yeah, this was the morning feed was Lutkenhaus and the 800 and this. Pictures of the incident. I mean, it felt so unnecessary for Lyles to do it. But then I was reading, I don't know why I was reading this, but I was reading that Bednarek allegedly had a Twitter account in which he threw shade at Lyles and his now wife. And so Lyles has this beef with him. And anyway, then I was like, hang on a moment, this is track and field, not WWE. I'm going to stop this now. So I don't know. I mean, Lyles, we've spoken about him before. He seems like he's trying really hard. And this seems like the sort of thing that he would do deliberately because he knows it'll put him in the headlines. And he was on Sports Illustrated, that he was on that show First Take that runs on ESPN that basically never thinks about track and field. And he got himself onto it. So it's almost like, I wonder if this is designed.
In the world we live in today, that's what the media is going to pick up on. And it's got eyeballs looking at athletics.
Then immediately after, like by the Tuesday, they were talking about the rematch was going to be in Lausanne. Turns out it's not. It's in Poland a few days before. So I think I may have gotten this confused.
Silesia.
But the 16th of August, they'll race one another over 100 meters again. Because Bednarek, by the way, had won the US 100-meter title a few days before. So he's a pretty big name in global sprinting. Now, if you haven't heard of him, you're going to. And also thanks to Lyles, you are. So I think overall it's good for the sport. But I mean, it's these sprinters, like, I don't know if we finished on those two, because that's not the only fight that two sprinters were involved in last week. Did you see the other one?
It was Sha'Carri Richardson.
Yeah, and Christian Coleman in the airport.
Yeah, and she got arrested, didn't she?
And then I think
detained for 24 hours or something.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's one of those ones. If it's not, it's like sort of like a non-sporting story. So I sort of glossed over it.
It is. The only reason I noticed it and Pat is because remember Mike's question to her that she snapped at him for at the World Champs. It even got him,
right, yeah.
It was even on Netflix show that what was it called, Sprint. So I told him about it, and she. There's an example, actually. I don't know how old Sha'Carri Richardson was when she sort of broke through. She wasn't a precocious teen like these other ones we've been talking about. But that's a career that just you worry that she's just stalling and she's going to drop off precipitously.
It does seem to be a bit like that because she didn't qualify for the 200.
Yeah, she pulled out.
She's going in the 100 meters to the World Champs. So we'll see then. But I can't remember the name of the other American 100 meters runner.
Melissa Jefferson Woodard.
Yeah,
crazy fast. Yeah, like 10.6 something.
She's looking unstoppable at the minute.
Coached by Dennis Mitchell. Which, if you raise your eyebrows at coach associations, like, come on. Anyways, yeah.
Well, while we're on that topic, do you see Shelby Houlihan won the 5K and she'll be going to the World Championships?
I did, yes. I saw that. Come back.
Luckily, there's not much burrito pork in in Japan, thank God.
I saw an interview with her afterwards in which they asked her about Ruth Chepngetich, and she said basically she doesn't know what to make of it because she's lost all confidence in the anti-doping authorities, which is of course her position. You know, it always has been. So she's holding it, which is, I guess, predictable.
The other 5K performance I noticed was that Cole Hocker won the 5K.
Was he second in the 15 as well?
I think he was third in the 15, wasn't he?
Because their 15
Well,
was
he's second or
interesting
third.
because Nagus didn't make it. He was fifth. So
He didn't, no.
so that those two that were medalists in, I was going to say Rio. Why was I thinking Rio? In Paris, only one of them is there. So that's a shame for the world champs in a way, because I think Nagus is there's still an option. You can climb through the window, as it were, or back door if you wish, by winning the Diamond League. Because Worlds is so late this year, Nagus could go and win the Diamond League title and still qualify for it. Did you see that?
Yeah, because what was interesting to me about Hocker was that he beat Grant Fisher, but he beat him with a kick in the final.
This is the
Final
dilemma.
straight sort of thing.
This is why, like, if you're a 1500 meter runner and you're not looking at a 5000 at Worlds, you are missing an opportunity, because it's the same thing that Engelbretson benefits from. The 1500 is always first, so you focus on your main event, and then you go and you race the 5000 where you've got very little to lose. And the problem for the 5K, 10K guys is they can't. Well, they of course they can beat you, but how do you deal with Ingebrigtsen or Hocker if you're Fisher?
You're going to have to make the pace quick from the outset, aren't you?
Yeah, you have
change all your tactics.
Yeah, so you have to really take strategic tactical risks to try and beat them. The problem with Ingebrigtsen is he's probably bet over 5,000 as well. So how do you beat that? It's almost impossible. But that's the dilemma, I think, Fisher. It's always fascinating to me. It's like, how does the endurance guy beat the fast guy in a tactical race? And it so often happens that they don't. And Hocker winning that 15 is the same. Because the bottom line is, if someone can run a 51-second last 400 or 52 last 400 off a slow pace, he's beating you. If you crank it up with 3 laps, 4 laps to go even, and he can run a 3:44 mile and you can only run a 3:48, he's beating you. So there's only one way you can win that, and it's the highest risk way for you.
Yeah, it's building up to be a superb World Championships coming up.
Yeah, I think so as well.
It's a shame it's in Japan. It's an awkward time for me.
Yeah, it's midday sort of thing. You're going to have to fake work meetings for 10, 12 days and just lock yourself away.
Yeah.
I'm in London at a conference. I mean, it's terrible. I can't even fake a work meeting. I'm going to have to fake a stomach bug or a gastro issue from food that I ate in the hotel or something.
It's a little bit obvious if we then go recording podcasts about it. So have a think. Anyway, we'll move on from athletics and we'll move on to the topic which came up on Discourse, because this is a new one on me. But Ernst on Discourse, he brought up the introduction of commercial IV drips as local dentist, of all places. And in the picture he posts, the option run from a 20-minute immune boost drip to a 3-hour NAD Stay Young drip. I have to mention the Stay Young drip. It's introduced me to the concept of the miracle molecule. The NAD molecule, which I'm going to call it, is apparently one of the most potent molecules available. It's antioxidant, anti-aging, apparently known as the fountain of youth molecule. It produces cellular energy and repair. Now, I'm not one to immediately call bullshit, but I might have to call it. Because start with a question which Ernst asks: is there any benefit to an IV drip providing supplements over any other method?
Not providing supplements. Like the IV method is obviously used in a clinical setting where you need rapid changes, because that's what you're doing. You're bypassing the whole process of the mouth, the gut, in order to get it into the blood. You just put it straight in. So you, in effect, cut out the middleman. So that's the point, and that's why when runners collapse or they are finishing marathons in not very good shape, they often stick an IV drip in there to correct something, and they feel good quickly, and off they go. Did I ever tell you that we once went to the Comrades Ultramarathon and we tried to give people, Tim Noakes' idea was you didn't need IV, you could actually just drink it to get it in. The problem is that the time to discharge is like 4 times longer, because you can't tolerate it by mouth. It takes longer to get into the blood, so rather just whack a needle in there, get it done, and get them out. So that's the shortest It's the shortest way to solve the problem. But for supplement provision, like, there's never an emergency crisis when it comes to supplements anyway. So there's no benefit. You might as well just eat and drink it.
Yeah, because if you want the immune boost drip, it's only 20 minutes, and it contains vitamin C, vitamin B12, vitamin BCO, and magnesium. What's vitamin BCO? Any ideas? Anyway, that one boosts your immune and energy levels with its antioxidant effects and improves circulation, improves cardiac health and wound healing. So just sit there for 20 minutes, have all that whacked in you, and you're instantly getting better. It's just, I don't know, I just don't get this, that people fall for it.
Yeah, I mean, like, there are anti-aging and recovery clinics here in Cape Town. In fact, Mike once got an email from them saying we would like to come on your podcast and discuss, and we would give you free treatments to the clinic, free admission to the clinic for 6 months or whatever it was, if you would do that for us. And we said no thanks. But yeah, it's kind of like one of those things that has sprung up as part of the anti-aging bro science world of medicine and performance and so on. But it's doping as well. For athletes, by the way. So
how is it doping?
Well, WADA's got a policy that prevents fluid. It exceeds 100 milliliters over 12 hours. There's a few reasons WADA's done that. I mean, like, one is that IV fluids can dilute the blood and urine, so you can make detection of substances more difficult. So you mask it by using volume, as it were. Makes sense, right? You're just trying to dilute the drug. Then in theory, unfair recovery and performance enhancement. If you're in a multi-stage race, Tour de France or Cape Epic or something, even a Olympic sevens tournament that's run over 3 days, and you whack a IV in, you can speed up rehydration and recovery, because the speed at which it works is faster than by mouth. That's the point, right? But not for supplements. And then just health and safety oversight. So 2 names for you. Have you ever heard of these ones? Ryan Lochte and Samir Nasri.
Swimmer and footballer.
Yeah, they both served bans for exceeding the IV doping limits, and they were caught because these geniuses posted it on social media. So in 20, I don't know, it feels like a million years ago, Samir Nasri went to, I think, Los Angeles, and he went to one of these clinics, and they posted a picture of him getting an IV vitamin drip on a social media account. And in the marketing material, it spoke about this product, and I think I even looked it up. I saw if I could find the picture. It's him sort of smiling, thumbs up, and then they posted it. And they claimed it was a 3-liter hydration drip, so clearly in excess of the water limit of 100 per 12 hours. And then Ryan Lochte's was sometime in 2018, 17 maybe. He posted photos on his own Instagram account receiving an IV drip. So USADA said, "What's this about?" And he told them that it was a drip, and he had to confess that it exceeded 100 per 12 hours, and he got 14 months, I think, for that one. So
that's quite a lot, actually.
Yeah,
He's taken pretty seriously. Okay.
Yeah, Nasri got less. I think it was a 6-month ban. So yeah, it is taken seriously. And I remember once talking to a friend of mine who was running the medical tent at a sports event. I won't say which one, and they were pretty committed to giving these athletes the best hospitality possible. And one of the services they were going to offer them was every day after competition, they could come in and have an IV drip. I was like, you're supporting their doping then, right? It's like, hang what? So anyway, people don't often appreciate that it's a doping offense, but it is.
You'll enjoy the sports performance drip I'm reading here, because the function of this one, it's 30 minutes, right? And you get improves performance mentally and physically, improves recovery with less cramps, and less muscle fatigue, improves immunity and assists with sport endurance. These are just spurious, wild claims. It's great.
Yeah, these things, they can claim whatever they want, right? And it feels like there's no oversight, because as
how
a
do you
number,
fall for it? How would you actually fall for that? Come on.
You don't listen to this podcast, that's for sure. You're not very discerning if you fall for that. I think a lot of people say, what's the risk, And that's one of the things that a number of you pointed out on Discourse, is that there actually are risks. But I think the calculus for a lot of people is, vitamins are good. I'm going to do it straight into the blood. That's got to be good. And there's no downside, so let me go there. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there can be downsides, because Dylan posted, I'm only going to go into it briefly, that there are reports in Australia where with most supplements there are no side effects, but large doses of B6, there's a risk of peripheral neuropathy, which is a health problem now that they're looking at in Australia. So it's not that these things are completely harmless. You do have to be a little bit careful about what you're putting in your body. And I wouldn't, and there's even, as people were saying, these things even sterile.
Yeah, and so again, it's the same thing. On one side, they make outrageous claims, promises that are clearly false. On the other side, they don't disclose the risks, either of the procedure or of the stuff in the bag that you're getting, like the B6. And clearly the fact that they do this means there's no oversight. So like they're not treating it like a medical thing. And the reality is that if you are getting a drip, there's a strong until these clinics came along, there's a likelihood you're in a hospital setting. So it's a clinical procedure. It's a clinical tool that they are administering in a non-clinical setting. Now they'll make promises about the sterility, etc., of the hygiene that they abide by, etc. But like, there's no guarantee. So I don't know. It's just there's clearly no regulation. That's what it needs. Well, it doesn't need regulation. It should just be stopped. But just like on that NAD one, for instance, we've often spoken about lactate being formed by pyruvate, and the reason lactate has to be formed is to keep those NADs alive, because they are really essential molecules in the procedure by which we create ATP. In the thing called the electron transport chain, and they accept hydrogens and create ATP. The thing about that is like NAD can't get from the blood into the cell. There's no way for it to enter the cell, so it's useless even as an IV infusion. It first has to be, in effect, disassembled inside your body in order to be taken up and then reassembled, which means you might as well take the parts in, not the NAD itself. So they sell it as if put it directly in and it can be used, but it can't be. It's kind of like, to think of an analogy, like imagine you ordered a bicycle online and the bike arrives in the van and the guy says, "Mr. Davies, congrats, here's your new Canyon," or whatever it is. And the moment you wheel that bike inside your house, it comes apart. That's what happens in the body to these things. And so you have to rebuild it anyway. So now you're sitting with two wheels, two brake levers, a derailleur, a frame, a stem, but you still got to put it together. And that's the problem. So like they sell it as though like, oh, this is going to bypass digestion straight into the blood. It's not there yet when it's in the blood. It still has to be broken up, reassembled inside the cell. So it's all lies.
Mm-hmm. And that Fountain of Youth one, what a surprise. It takes 2 to 3 hours to actually put it into you, because of course you're spending a lot more. And so if it takes longer, it's got to be better. Yeah. It's nuts. You're nuts if you're doing that, people. Nuts. Yeah. Anyway, let's do a quick one here, because we reported a little while ago that World Athletics, it was going to begin its screening process for gender before the World Athletics Championships began. But apparently the discoverer of the SRY gene is rejecting its use for screening, which sounds quite important to me, actually.
Yeah.
You highlighted this one.
The thing is, he didn't reject its use for screening because he either deliberately or accidentally doesn't understand what screening involves. Like the article was published on The Conversation, I think the Australian one, by a guy called Andrew Sinclair. And it's one of the most... It's either accidentally or negligently one of the most uninformed opinion pieces I've ever read, or it's bad faith. Because he criticizes the use of the SRY and these mandatory genetic tests. I wish they'd call it screens. That's the key point we wanted to make in this conversation. But he makes all sorts of claims, and he explains, for instance, about how having an SRY gene doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have male development, because... he says, importantly, the cells of these people, referring to those who have androgen insensitivity syndrome, are physically unable to respond to the testosterone produced by these testes, yet they would receive positive SRY tests and be excluded from competition. Now, if you read the World Athletics eligibility policy, point 3.5, literally says that an exception will be made for individuals who have an SRY gene and whose subsequent testing shows are unable to respond to the testosterone and have CAIS. They would be allowed to compete. So he's made a claim they would receive positive tests and be excluded, when the policy literally tells us that they wouldn't be. So he's either not read it or he's not bothered to pay attention to it. And that's why I think it's a bad faith argument. He also talks about it not being cut and dried because it throws up false positives. But the thing is, no lab technician in their right minds, worth their salt, would ever run one test and say, oh, it's positive, now we're going to ban that athlete. And that's not what World Athletics would do either. So you'd run the test in triplicate or more, and you'd run it at thresholds that minimize the risk of a false positive. And even when you get a positive, you don't ban the athlete. It's just an indication of further testing. So the point that I wanted to make is that this article it's astonishingly bad, so poor, because it deliberately misrepresents how the screening process would work. That said, one of the big challenges I think sport's going to have, if others follow suit, athletics and boxing have done it, and I hope that others will go the same way, is to position this not as a diagnostic exclusion test, but rather as a screen that indicates the need for further assessment based upon which you then make a decision. We've spoken about that in this podcast. And what this guy has completely missed, I think deliberately, is that it's being used to screen and then indicate for a medical examination and diagnosis. And if you read the World Athletics Policy, it's really clear that you don't simply say SRY out. You say SRY present. Now the medical manager needs to initiate a series of subsequent tests. Can we diagnose this person? Is it complete androgen sensitivity syndrome? If so, let's think about that a little bit differently, because the person has no advantage. So what are you excluding them for? So sport is going to have to be very disciplined, and I must say I'm a little disappointed in how athletics has spoken about its own process, because they haven't been disciplined about explaining this as a screen based upon which medical tests are indicated. They've positioned it as a test.
So do you have any idea why he's come up with this now?
No, not particularly. I see that his affiliation is with he's a deputy director of the Murdoch Children's Research Institute, and their mission statement includes some statements about treating treating people who have these DSDs. So he's obviously involved in the clinical space. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the DSD thing is ethically and legally quite tricky. No one should pretend it's a simple one. I see a lot of people on social media saying it's really basic. Semenya and others are just cheats and they just want to dominate women's sport. It's not like that. I think it's a little bit more complex. The trans issue is different. And just on that, the World Athletics introducing the screen is in larger part designed to manage the trans issue than the DSD issue. Mm-hmm. And I say that because in the last 40 whatever years, there have been more DSD cases than you think. I'll say that for sure. Like, there's been a lot of them. We're aware of a handful, but there've been a lot. But that number is small in comparison with how many trans athletes there will be in the next few years. There are more trans girls and women in the US track and field system now than there've ever been DSD athletes in the whole world.
Well, yeah, but we're now at the peak of it, because
Correct.
World Athletics
yes.
will bring the numbers back
exactly.
to zero, you would have thought, in the trans case.
Exactly.
And also provide fairness on the DSD case.
I think so, yeah, exactly.
It gets implemented.
Correct. So this World Athletics' action here is designed around males and not DSDs. It includes the DSDs, but it's not focused on the DSDs. And then the final point just to make about this, and I posted a relatively lengthy thread on Twitter, which I try and avoid, but I sort of felt I had to respond to this nonsense article, is that these people never, ever provide an alternative. Never. So at the moment, and this guy was involved back in 1999-2000, when they decided to get rid of the testing that was done to ensure eligibility for women's sport. And what that decision did was it opened the doors to saying that we still have to exclude male advantage from women's sport, like we had all those cases, but it was based on what? Appearance, deep voices, non-conformity to gender stereotypes, racism. And so the problem is, like, if you're going to protect women's sport, the boundaries around women's sport, you have to have some mechanism to identify who doesn't belong. And in the absence of a screening procedure, the only thing you can do is base it on what people look like. And that's far worse. So the people who've proposed screening, and I'm among them, have said that this is a better alternative to what would have to happen in its absence. But folks like Sinclair and others who've criticized it, they never propose a third alternative. And so the only conclusion I can make is that they actually don't care about the boundaries around women's sport.
Is it really their prerogative, or not prerogative, their responsibility to provide another solution if they just happen to know, or not happen to know, if they know or think that another solution is wrong?
I would say so, because you're coming in there and you're going to take away the solution that's been proposed. So where are you going to leave the thing you're discussing? To me, you're reckless, and I suppose wreck might be too strong. But if I go and say that's not going to work,
if he genuinely believes that this is wrong using the SRY gene, then he doesn't need to have a solution to say, no, hang on a minute, I found this gene and this is wrong. I disagree with you there.
Well, what's he saying the sport needs to do then? Stay where it is?
No, all I'm saying is he doesn't have to provide a solution. It's like, I can tell you that murder's wrong, but I don't know what the solution to people being murdered is.
See, where I think it is because he's criticizing a very specific part of a solution that's been developed to a problem. So he's taken away. If people were to listen to him, he would take away the means by which the boundary around women's sport would be protected. So okay, fine, Andrew, you've done that, but what would you suggest we do as an alternative? I would expect that. I would never offer a criticism without saying there's a better way to do this.
This is a scientific criticism. He's saying that the test is scientifically not up to scratch to do the job it's designed to do.
First of all, he's completely wrong about that, because it works. It's almost perfect, and he's criticizing. Whether he realizes or not, he's criticizing the procedure by which the test result is used. And he clearly either doesn't care about that or doesn't understand it, because he's made claims that are demonstrably falsifiable. This athlete will be excluded if they have an SOI. Well, no, they won't, because if they have CIS, as it says literally in the policy, they won't be excluded. So his criticism is false. So that's the first point I want to make, is that he hasn't come up with...
Not to him, though. Not to him. He's thinking he'd be negligent. He'd be thinking he's negligent if I don't bring up that I think this test doesn't work.
Yeah, but you can't. To me, that's intellectual terrorism. You're just destroying an idea. I would never go into something like, if it's like, pick something by comparison. That's not trivial. The UCI safety regulations, we've criticized them. We've never said the UCI's off their heads with their handlebar width and stuff. They shouldn't do it. End of conversation. We always come and say, why don't they rather look at race radius, smaller team sizes, changing the course design in the final 3 kilometers of a sprint stage, etc. Like, there's always something constructive. I've got very little time and patience for people who only want to criticize without constructive solution. That's my personal view on it.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just thinking, if he hasn't got a solution, but he still feels he's got to say it.
But then at least it's incumbent on him to say something accurately. Like, what is he criticizing? He's criticizing fiction.
Okay.
These guys are using an SOY gene to exclude males, or people who are female. Who knows? But it's just, anyway, I'm going to post the link. Let us know on Discourse. It's always a lively discussion, this one. I just think that if you come to a debate and you criticize, it's kind of incumbent on you, A, to be accurate in your criticisms. Don't say something that's like clearly false. And secondly, if you are interested in this as a policy, you're interested enough to criticize it for the harms it'll do, but you haven't recognized that your solution is going to create other new harms. That's not good enough to me, I think. Let us know.
I'm just looking from his point of view, almost like a whistleblower. And if he's got a concern, then he has the right to raise it, and without a. But
if he's genuinely saying something that's got validity in his criticisms, then I think people would really pay attention to it. In fact, they should. I mean, like when you read the article, he's up front. He says, I discovered the gene. So he's got this credibility. And so if he's making a couple of points about the specificity of the test, the risk of false positives, and the fact that it's going to unfairly exclude certain people who should be allowed to participate in women's sport, then absolutely. The problem I've got with it is he's not blowing the whistle on anything except some imagined straw man, because both the false positive risk and the risk of these complete insensitivity cases being excluded are dealt with in the eligibility policy. And so the whole premise of his rejection is unreal. It's imagined. It's fictional that they've gone and criticized. And I think that makes it difficult to have a good faith discussion around the specific issues. That sensitivity problem, that false exclusion problem. How do you have a reasonable conversation about whether that's dealt with when one person's saying it's a problem and the policy literally recognizes both those things and has tried to manage them? Just it's hard to accept that there's no constructive contribution when there's only this destructive criticism that is wrong as well. So I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. Read the piece. If he's making any claims that are worth responding to, then let us know and we'll respond to them in a very specific way. But he either hasn't read or doesn't care to read the World Athletics policy that explains that these are being used as a screen that then triggers a series of downstream tests that arrive at a diagnosis. And
well, actually, to be fair, it does say at the bottom, editor's note, this article has been amended to clarify what the SRY test reveals and to add details of potential exemptions under the World Athletics proposals. So it was obviously pointed out at some point that he had missed out those.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't know whether he even looked at what the World Athletics eligibility process was. And if that, yeah, so, but to me, the bigger problem is, by all means criticize and tell people that screening's not the way to go, but you can't leave it there. Because the implication of leaving it there is to say to women that actually, you know what, your category doesn't deserve protection. Or it's to say, keep going based on appearance and who has a deep voice. Is there a third option, yes or no? Actually, I think, let me answer that myself, because I do think there might be a third option. And maybe I'm overreacting because I think this is, based on my experience in this debate, what people who take his position and approach actually want is no regulation of the women's category based on gender identity, particularly in athletes with DSDs. They would rather there was no policing. They would say that if you are identified as female at birth, then irrespective of the presence of male advantage, you should be allowed to compete in women's sport because of that first decision that was made. And that's the one that I don't think women accept, and nor should they. I think that if you have boundaries around their category for fairness and for safety, then you need a way to test who's excluded. And if this is what the sport has evolved over 15 years, longer, 5 decades, if you wish, to propose, then if you come along and say no, I genuinely just think that it is incumbent upon you to either say, I don't think that you should do this because in principle it's wrong and we should allow gender identity to trump male advantage. Or you should say, I still believe that women's sport needs a way to exclude male advantage. Your solution isn't the best, but here is what I think you should consider doing. That would be an approach I would be happy to sit down with people to discuss, but it's not happened here. And that's, yeah, and I mean, I take your point, like, so one could argue it's not his problem, it's the sport's problem. But I don't think that they've got a problem because his criticisms are unfounded and unwarranted, wrong. But even if he had him, I think good faith would be to say, here's a better way. There is no better way because I don't think he cares. I don't know. I find it enormously frustrating when, and it happens a lot, when people only say, no, that's rubbish, won't work. Okay? Thanks.
Come up with something else.
Yeah.
Come up with something better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're that qualified by virtue of I should know because I discovered the SOI gene, then tell us how else to do it. But don't tell us not to do it because now you're neglecting women's rights to fair and safe sport.
Right, yeah.
So,
I'm sure we're going to hear a bit about that one.
Yeah.
On Discourse.
Hope so.
So anyway, and finally, some quick news from the NFL, where George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers has revealed that the league has banned the use of smelling salts. The Athletic obtained the NFL memo that says the use of ammonia inhalants, including ammonia capsules, inhalers, ammonia in a cup, or any form of smelling salts is prohibited during all NFL games, including pre-game activities and halftime, both on the sideline and locker rooms. And while this may seem a minor and odd ruling, it does have basis in common sense, because the memo goes on to say that the Ammonia can be used to mask potential signs or symptoms of a concussion, leading the NFL Head, Neck and Spine Committee to recommend prohibiting their use. So it sounds like a little bit of a tiny step forward with concussion being taken more seriously in the NFL.
Yeah, it was interesting, this one.
How does ammonia? How does it even work? Smelling salts.
So it's there's a small degree of overlap with something we've discussed in the past, which was pickle juice. They come via and end up in different places, but there is some overlap. And basically, what happens is the ammonia dissolves with fluid in the nasal cavity, and it creates like a very alkaline substance, ammonium nitrate or something. I forget the exact name. And then what that does, let me actually find it for you because I want to be accurate about that. It triggers nerve sensors that are very sensitive to chemicals and pain. They're called nociceptors because it's such a noxious substance. Ammonium hydroxide, so that's the name of the substance. And then what it does is there's a trigeminal nerve that gets stimulated, and that nerve carries a signal into the medulla of the brain, which is where respiration is controlled. And so the consequence of stimulating that nerve is you take a sharp inhalation, like a deep breath, your adrenaline response goes up, so you get the old fight or flight. Heart rate goes up, increased breathing rate, and alertness increases. And that's why it revives people, is because it gives them a whack of adrenaline in response to this stimulus through the nose. Where it overlaps with the pickle juice is that remember we spoke about that, like in the mouth there's a reflex that involves these things called transient receptor potential channels, TRPs. They're the same channels that the ammonium hydroxide stimulates. So they end up activating the nerve in the same way, but the one comes from the mouth and the other one comes from the nose, and the one causes a muscle reflex and the other one causes a stress response, adrenaline surge. Mm-hmm. So that's how they work.
So the sportsmen are using it in some cases to sort of get themselves ready for battle almost. Rugby in the NFL sort of wakes you up ready to go. But as they say, it can also be used to sort of bring you round after a concussion, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing in the World Cup football, either 14 or 18, player took a blow to the head and then they ran on with some smelling salts, gave him a whiff of this, and they showed it in slow motion. They hovered this thing under his nose, his eyes went wide, he like snapped his head back and he carried on playing. And the whole world was like, hang on a moment, that guy's just taken a mighty whack to the head. He looked out of it when he was on the ground, and now you've given him something, he looks fine again. So we've just masked a brain injury here.
Well, it's been brought up in terms because rugby players have been using it. I know that the people who are seeing Tide Burton have seen inhaling it as during the Lions tour. So, but rugby authorities, it says, have no immediate plans for this. While the issue is likely to be considered by World Rugby's advisory panel of concussion experts, is that you? At their next scheduled meeting in September, it is you. Yeah. There is no intention to convene to discuss smelling salts before then. So you'll have to look into this.
Have you seen a use of smelling salts in rugby? I haven't seen it. I mean, who knows if it's happening in the changing rooms and stuff, right? But I haven't seen it on the field.
At half time, Tide Burn was shown inhaling smelling salts. It says here as the rest of the team huddled up.
Oh wow!
And from my amateur days, they were sort of fairly prevalent. And I mean, they are used in sports like weightlifting and things like that, bodybuilding, strongman.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Get everything ready to go.
I've seen that, yes.
But obviously, in the case of contact sports, perhaps not such a good idea. There we go.
Yeah, it's clearly something that has to be discussed. If it's being used relatively widely and it's got the potential to mask concussions, then how can you stand behind we're trying to identify every concussion except the ones that you managed to hide using smelling salts policy?
Yeah. I don't think it's so much trying to hide them, it's just trying to get the player back into action. So I suppose it is trying to hide them, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe hide. That's not the right word. It wasn't phrased.
No, I'm not going to argue. I'm not arguing any more semantics with you today.
No, they're not semantics. There's no such things as semantics. That's look. If it's, I'm sure it will be discussed actually now because it sort of has to be. But it's an interesting one. I don't know what else they'll do. Like our poor old Kittel said he was going to retire.
Yeah, he was devastated that you couldn't use
distraught,
him.
I think was the word he used. They're going to have to.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing, George, but just drink pickle juice.
Snorting pickle juice.
It's not,
no, Jesus, no.
It's not the same thing. Anyways, yeah, that's it,
Yeah.
is it?
That's it, yeah. That's so much for our snappy news version.
Yeah, but there was some substance to dive into on that particular news. So, yeah, that's it. We next look forward to the Olympics. I wish it was the Olympics. The World Champs. When do they start exactly? Is it the 12th or something of September? Is that right?
Is it the 9th or the 12th, something like that?
Oh, that's even worse for my meeting overlap.
Are we talking about smelling salts while they're going on? 13th to the 21st.
Okay, that's not actually the worst overlap in the world. The meeting was moved forward a wee bit. That's lucky for me. Anyway, we're going to try and do something around the World Champs. We have in the last couple, so we'll definitely try and cover those for you. Anyway, let me wrap this up. We'll see you all on Discourse. Otherwise, you'll hear from us all in a week's time. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.